Hi, welcome to Costume Commentary. I'm Kate.
And I'm Brit, and this week we're going to be reviewing the costumes from Bioshock Infinite. So before we get started, spoiler alert, we're going to be spoiling some aspects of the game. Sorry, not sorry.
Overall, how did we feel about the costuming in the game? I'm on the fence about it. Some things I really loved and some things make me rage so hard I can't see.
I'm definitely on the same page as far as overall whether or not we like the costumes. There are some characters that I love their costumes and I think it was done amazingly, and some of the costumes look like they were taken from fashion plates, they're so historically accurate, and then you have other characters who just make no sense. And I can handle historical inaccuracy if it serves the plot. You can make an argument that it does in this film, but I don't really agree. I think it just seemed like they didn't know what they wanted to do, so they just did everything in a way that I'm not a fan of.
It's almost like they wanted to make the main characters so basic that everybody could find something they liked about them, and it just took away from the characters.
At the end of the day, the characters are very distinctive, Elizabeth especially, but that doesn't necessarily mean that their costumes are good, at least in my opinion. Booker, for example, is one that I love that's distinctive, but I'm just not a fan of Elizabeth.
No.
As we will discuss in the rest of this video.
Sorry to anybody who loves Elizabeth.
Yeah, I mean, I love her as a character, but the costumes, they make so little sense that something that could be aesthetically pleasing just loses all of that for me because I'm so distracted by how it just doesn't make sense.
Elizabeth's costume is really great for cosplay purposes, but that's really the only good thing that they accomplished in making her so simple.
Even with the simplicity of the costume, there are aspects of it that don't really make sense with her character. She seems kind of demure and quiet. She never has been able to go out and talk to people, and that the outfit that she wears that is one of her more iconic outfits where she's with the corset and that little bolero jacket, I didn't feel like it fit Elizabeth as a character. And as you can see in the concept art, it kind of seems like even the designers didn't really know where they were going with it. There are elements from eras all over the place, and you can argue that maybe some of it was brought up for time travel purposes, but no other character has this much of a mismatch in their costume. So one character whose costume actually really benefited their character development and the story was Booker.
Booker's costume is actually rather accurate, apart from little details. And those details that they made him look like he was an alcoholic and his life was falling apart, which is pretty much what he was.
Yeah.
He is wearing a vest throughout most of the game, and that vest is unbuttoned, which was a very uncommon thing to do in that day and age. You would always be buttoned up, especially when you were in public, and his tie is half undone.
Yeah, it doesn't even really look like a tie, it just looks like a ascot scarf type thing.
Yeah, which wouldn't have happened.
But those elements of him looking disheveled and inaccurate add to
Him.
what he's going through, and you can look at one picture of him and sort of understand where he's coming from.
It really did aid his character development to show that.
So those are definitely examples of where costuming might be inaccurate for the time or not super make sense for where they are in a story, but actually aid the character development, and that's when I think that you can do those changes, but Elizabeth didn't feel that way.
So Booker has a very odd brand on his hand that is not something that you would really commonly see people running around and doing.
Yeah.
He has AD on his hand. The Lutece twins towards the end of the game mention how that brand on his hand is his hair shirt. A hair shirt references something that happened during medieval times when people in certain religious practices would literally wear a shirt made out of coarse and itchy hair for religious penance. So what they're showing is he is branded himself to remind himself of something that he did or something that he believes has happened to him, that he needs to constantly be paying penance for.
And it's a really fantastic nod to the era, not only with a costuming choice, which a brand or a tattoo, I would consider that a costuming choice, as well as, you know, character design. But it also is a very great nod to the time as far as lingo. That's not something that you hear people say
No.
now at all, but for the time that might have been a much more common phrase. So it's another layer that they added on that brings you back to that time and immerses you more in the game.
Now let's address the elephant in the room and talk about Elizabeth.
Yeah. There are elements of her costume that are done well and lend to her story. For example, she comes from Booker, who spoiler alert, is also Comstock. And Comstock has this weird fascination with the founding fathers and religious heroes, and you actually can see some elements of that in the first costume she wears. The shirt that sort of has this sailor vibe, and it's got the blue collar with the gold edging, that was taken from these Revolutionary era heroes and the paintings of them, these blue and gold colors that are very patriotic and very royal. These are clothes that she probably would have gotten from Comstock since she was under his care. And sort of his daughter? It's weird. Little elements like that make sense and lend to her character, because it lets you know like who she's around and who she's influenced by. There are other elements that just don't make any sense and don't add anything to her character. And also there's the aspects of her with the corset where she seems kind of overly sexual and fan service-ish. And I have no problem with characters being sexual, it's just that didn't fit her. It's the same as the argument with Overwatch, where you have Tracer in a sexual pose when she's not a very sexual character. But then you also have Widowmaker, who is, and a pose like that makes sense for her.
Yeah.
You know? I have no issue with characters like being a little sexy or whatever, but if it doesn't make sense for the character, it's not going to add anything and there's no reason for it. Because you play as Booker, and he interacts with her in a fatherly, protective way, that's how you feel towards her as a character.
Yeah.
And it feels kind of gross to be playing as this protective, sort of fatherly, actual father character, spoiler alert, and be looking at this girl who is essentially wearing her underwear outside, a very low-cut top. Even at the end when there's that whole group of Elizabeths, there's one of them who doesn't even have the jacket, it's just the corset, and it feels almost voyeuristic. This costume has become so iconic. It is simple, it's an easy costume for cosplayers to pull off. A lot of people look great in it. Looking at you, Meg Turney. There is one thing about her that's accurate, and it's the shape of her skirt, but really only the shape, not even the way that it's sewn or the waistline of it, just the actual shape that it gives her body. That part of it is accurate, but other than that, it's really nothing about her dress that even comes from any one time. It's not like they were a few years before, it's just that it's from all over the place.
There is, however, one accurate-ish Elizabeth in the entire game.
I got one.
Yes, at least one for a second.
Yeah, for about a second, right at the end.
Yeah. There is one Elizabeth at the end of the game where she is wearing a high-necked dress with a velvet collar and 3/4 length sleeves. That dress is actually quite accurate to the times, but unfortunately it's only in there for a couple seconds.
And right at the end of the game, you barely even see it, but to the trained eye, we know.
Yes,
We saw
I
that
wish
one.
that had been the costume for the entirety of the game. It's unfortunate that it is a little distracting, especially if you know about costuming, and if you don't, then don't worry about it.
Enjoy the game.
Yeah.
But for people who do, you're playing the whole game crying because she's wearing a corset, which, again, is underwear. Just a word of advice for anyone who's going to costume a period film or game or stage play. If your content is set before the 1990s, corsets are on the inside.
Yeah.
Stop it. They're not for outside play. No.
Unless you're into that.
I mean, now they are.
Yeah, now they are.
But in the 1870s or any other
1910s.
time, no. So this time we have the exact same favorite and least favorite looks. So we'll start with the bad news. Our least favorite is Elizabeth, unfortunately. Especially the corset with the little short jacket. It just
doesn't work.
doesn't at all, and I'm not a fan. And I know that there are so many people that are probably going to be angry at us. And it's not a detriment to the game. It's an amazing game.
And we apologize for our unpopular opinion.
Our favorite look was the Lutece twins. They are fantastic. Their color palette is different from everyone else. They're so distinctive and just freaking great, basically.
And it's such a contrast from the way their characters are. I mean, you hear them and you kind of like expect them to be in all dark colors, but they're these bright characters that just light up.
They oddly almost have like a Joker vibe to me, you know?
Yeah.
They're kind of twisted and a little bit dark. They're not evil.
No.
They're not villains. They are sort of indifferent to everything. They're just players on the chessboard. And they sort of take delight in the chaos that's going on around them, even if it's something that may end their existence. You know, they're just like, well, isn't this great fun?
For anybody who loves Dungeons & Dragons, that's a true neutral for you.
So the colors that they wear and the way that you would expect them to dress, but they end up being in these sort of bright poppy colors, it really works.
So overall, we enjoyed most of the costumes in this game.
Yeah. And the game as a whole.
Yes, the game is great.
The game itself is amazing, but unfortunately, the main iconic costume just
Falls flat.
yeah, it's not one that we're a fan of.
We highly recommend that you go out and play this game. It's an amazing game, and all of the designs in it are great and really do lend to the plot, except for a few minor major details.
Minor major. But the game doesn't lose anything because of it. We just have to pick on it because that's what we're here for. We're here to talk about the costumes, and in that regard, it sort of falls flat, but it's definitely a game worth playing. It's not something that I would go and say, no, this is horrible. But overall,
Good job.
So thank you for watching this episode of Costume Commentary. Make sure to leave us a like if you liked it, and comment down below what you would like to see us review the costumes from next.
Stay tuned for this Friday when we review the 2015 live-action Cinderella, and subscribe if you'd like to be notified about that immediately.
Thanks for watching.
It's just another way that they show that they belong together. And I think the pivotal moment for him that shows his character development is when he first meets her. And she's convincing him to not kill the stag and saying, just because it is what done doesn't mean what it should be done.
Yeah.